What's up guys, Nick here, and in this video, I'm gonna go ahead and show you how you can actually brand your product like a pro. Now, a lot of people ask me about branding and ask if it's important. You know, it's one of those things where I feel like it's important up to an effect, but as you continue to expand and grow, it is important to have a solid brand that you can adhere to, especially as you continue to launch more and more products and as you want to design better and better secondary images. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and set yourself up so you don't have to pay, a ton of money for all your branding design needs. And you can actually positively leverage an outsourced team member that can, charge $4 to $5 an hour overseas versus someone here in the US. So what I'm going to introduce you to is a concept called a brand style guide. Now, this is a really, really easy way to have your style set for the rest of the time that your business exists. Now, I recommend working with a high quality designer based in the US. Just based off of my experience, I've found that a lot of US based designers, they're better at creative. So they're better at coming up with how your brand should look, how your brand should be conveyed. But then as you get them to do things like packaging design, or you get them to do things like, just doing graphics or infographics on your secondary images, it starts to get really, really expensive because they can be anywhere from $20 to $50 an hour. However, what I think is worthwhile to work with them on is to build something that's called a brand style guide. Now, if you look here on the right, you can see this is a good example of a brand style guide. Now, I'm also going to include, an example of what we use for Seller Tradecraft so you can get a sense of what to expect from a designer. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see there's two different ways that the logos are shown, and then they show a color scheme, right? With the exact colors and the exact numbers that are used to achieve those colors. They also show the font, exactly what kind of font is used. And it also shows how you can use the logo in various different ways. Now, this is really, really helpful because it allows you to use this and give it to any single designer. And it's basically a guide for them to go ahead and design according to your brand. Because if you're creating multiple packaging or you're doing a bunch of different infographics, you want to make sure that it all looks similar. It all looks like it comes from the same place. So having a style guide allows you to be as cohesive as possible when you're doing any kind of graphic work, but it also allows you to try different graphic designers while also just adhering to this guide. Now, in terms of what is included, what's included usually is you can ask for a logo design. So that can be part of the brand style guide that you ask for them. Also font, color scheme, secondary logo, and text formatting. So let's go ahead and just dive really quickly into a style guide that you'll have access to, but that we use for Seller Tradecraft so you can get a good sense of what to ask for. Now, before we dive in, I do want to address cost. So, we're going to provide for you guys access to a designer that we've worked with and that we really like. What I think you should expect for any kind of design work like this, if it includes, let's say, one packaging design, one logo design, and also a brand style guide, I would guess that it would estimate around $500. That's how much it cost us to work with a pretty decent designer here in the US. Now remember, this is a sunk cost. So if you work with someone overseas, it's going to be a lot cheaper down the line. I mean, literally just by a factor of tens. So let's go ahead and dive into the Seller Tradecraft brand guide so you can get a good sense of what that looks like. Okay, here we are. So once again, you guys are going to have access to this. I'm going to include it in the link of the video. But, brand style guide, brand Bible, doesn't really matter what it's called. Most designers that you work with are going to know exactly what you're asking for. So remember, you want to work with a designer whose work you like and whose work you feel comfortable conveying into really the soul of your brand. So let's go and dive into what this looks like. So ours is super simple. This is something we use across our website just to make sure everything looks uniform. But these are the basic things that you can expect. So here you can see this is our logo. Our logo is shown in different variations if it's against a white background or against a colored background. It could be like against a black background or a white background. And over here you can see it's a very simple color scheme that we use for our branding. And you'll notice that across our YouTube channels and everything. And at the bottom, you can see that we've selected a specific font that's used in one instance and another. So you might ask, what's the difference between the two? Well, let's say you want to highlight like a title, in the summary of the back of your packaging. You're going to use one font for that, and for the actual body of the text, you're going to use a different font, so it can separate the two. That's going to be a good guide for your designers to use down the line. And make sure when you work with a designer that they send you the fonts that they've chosen, because a lot of times fonts have to be purchased. And if they use a font that you don't have, it's going to be difficult for a designer to replicate your fonts. Next, you'll see more iterations of how the logo is shown in different instances. So here you can see with the font, and here in a rectangular format. And the bottom, this is a really important guide too. It shows how to put all those things together. So it includes how the font is used, how you separate between the title and the body, and it shows exactly what the points would be expected throughout. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the next part of your question is likely, how do you go ahead and convey to the designer exactly what you're looking for? Now, that's a great question. So similar to what I talk about in photography, you're going to provide the designer a creative brief so you can make sure that the designer fully understands exactly what you're going for. Because remember, working with any contractor, it's the same thing. If you don't provide good direction, you're probably going to be unsatisfied with the results. So if you want to give them a clear direction, I'm going to give you a couple tips on how to outline that. And we're also going to go through an example of what a creative brief looks like. And you will also have a template that you can use for your own brand. So just general questions, what does your audience look like, right? Who are they? Are they male? Are they female? What are they interested in? Where do they shop? What's a good example of their lifestyle? What are some brands that convey your brand vision? What are similar brands that have, good logos that you want to emulate and that have the same color scheme that you'd like your designer to look at? Okay, so these are some basic things you want to think about. Really hone in on your target audience. Who do you think you're trying to target? Obviously it depends on the category. Sometimes you could be more general, sometimes you could be more specific. But again, having a good sense of who you're targeting will allow your designer to really nail down exactly how the logo should look. So let's go ahead and walk through an example of a creative brief. Okay, guys, here's an example of what a creative brief looks like, and we're going to walk through this together. Now, again, you're going to have access to this template, so feel free to use it. I just made up a brand, so I created a brand in my head for the purposes of this course called Higher Essence Supplements. Okay, Higher Essence. So this is exactly how you want to format it. You want to tell the designer exactly what you're looking for in the scope of work. So up here you can see the scope of work, logo for Higher Essence supplement brand, a brand guide, and packaging for a bottle, let's say, okay? Now we're gonna tell them what our goal is. Now, ultimately you wanna get recurring subscriptions, right, on Amazon if you sell supplements. Now, our goal is to build a loyal following of people who are beholden or want to have natural supplements revolved around holistic healing. Notice how granular I get and how specific I get. I find that, the more specific you are, the easier it is to get a better design work done. And also the easier it is to really nail down, the soul of your brand. And that can really resonate with people. And so it makes your brand really shareable. Now, the next part is we're talking about potential product lines. So this might be something that I'm either in the process of creating or I haven't created yet, but could be potential new things to add, just so they get a sense of exactly what the brand is going to be doing. So melatonin, Garcinia cambogia, protein powder, hemp protein powder, ashwagandha root extract. I just listed a couple things that might be relevant to the Higher Essence brand. Now, here's where I get even more granular. I talk about the audience, and I touched on this in the slides. Let's read this out. Extremely health conscious males, females in the pursuit of health and holistic healing through natural supplements like root extracts. This audience ideally dabbles in meditation, enjoys learning about Eastern culture, and engages in some sort of spiritual practice, whether through yoga or any other form of becoming centered. They are high income individuals who can afford jumping on the latest health trends. Okay, so this is very, very specific. And just by giving this to the designer, they can go into the head of the people that I'm targeting and they can come up with some kind of brand that adheres to this description. Okay, it's really important that you really nail this down because you can create fervent followers just by really having a good sense of who you're targeting. And if you're really focused on becoming a brand and building a brand and going off of Amazon as well, nailing this down is going to really reap a lot of rewards down the line because it's going to be easier for you to sell to retailers. It's going to be easier to be carried at other places. Having an audience is going to be really important, and nailing it down with exactly who you're trying to target is one of the first steps to getting there. Now over here, I've included some shops, places that they like to shop. Let's say Goop. Goop is a good example of a lifestyle brand. A lot of females like to shop there. They're very holistic focused. There's also Thrive Market, which is kind of like an online Whole Foods. Honest, it's all about natural, safe baby products. Whole Foods obviously is a good one. Lululemon is a good yoga brand. Again, it's very likely that when you create a brand, let's say you sell kitchen product, KitchenAid might come to mind or OXO might come to mind. Go ahead and just include brands that come to mind and brands that you want to emulate because it's likely you have an idea of what you're trying to target. Now, I add more stuff here to say words that best describe the brand. And this is, if I were to attribute a personality to the brand, what would it look like? And here I put as many descriptive words as possible because, again, I want my designer to get in the mind of my customers. So it's going to be warm, patient, young, energetic, contemplative, aspirational, new agey, natural, holistic, mindful. These are all going to be really helpful things to make sure your designer gets it right. Okay? All right, let's keep going. So you'll notice here I put a couple images. This is also going to be super helpful to help them get a sense of the color scheme that I'm looking for. Now, obviously, it's clear that's very colorful. I like a clean design. It's minimalist. I've also included other lifestyle brands that I think really assimilate to the brand that I'm going for with higher essence. And so the more examples you include here, the better. But just try to make sure that you make it easier for your designer by choosing brands that are cohesive, right? That really are going towards that direction of what you want your brand to look like. Just think about it on a deep level. Think about what feels intuitive. And a good way to get more ideas is to go to Pinterest. Pinterest is a great site for finding design ideas and just typing things like healthy brand ideas or branding, that kind of stuff. Once you go ahead and add those images in, you can just copy them into your creative brief doc, and then you'll be good to go. This is typically enough that you'll need to get a designer started on coming up with a brand. Now, again, I highly recommend, if this is something that's important to you, that you hire a US-based designer or someone based in your country, because they tend to understand your audience, especially if you're selling in the US, better than someone overseas. I find that overseas a lot of times their sense of design is a couple years behind where we are currently, or at least it doesn't really resonate with the US. So having that creative brief done, or sorry, the brand style guide done by someone who's based in the US is going to be helpful, because when you hire overseas work, they'll have exactly the style that you're going for. That's it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, go ahead and hit us up on Facebook. We'll be sure to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.